Hi everybody, it's Neil Shah, the Chief De-Stressing Officer of the Stress Management Society, and today I'm joined by Simon Blake, who's the Chief Executive of Mental Health First Aid. And as you know, as part of Stress Awareness Month, myself and my colleagues are going to be conducting a series of brief interviews as part of our 30-day challenge, just to ensure we're equipping and empowering people to increase their resilience to a rapidly changing world, to allow us to change and adapt to essentially what it would potentially is going to be a new norm, a new way of being. And this is an opportunity for me to be able to speak to people that I like, respect, or want the world to know about. So I'll leave it up to you to decide which one of those three my wonderful guest today is. So Simon, do you want to tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do?
Sure. So I'm Simon Blake, as I said, Chief Exec of Mental Health First Aid England. MHFA England is a social enterprise. We have a vision to improve the mental health of the nation, but specifically to train 1 in 10 of the adult population in mental health skills and awareness, because we think that will create that cultural tipping point where we all understand, deal with, take mental health seriously and reduce the stigma which is currently associated with poor mental health.
Absolutely. I just want to say for the record, I've been a huge fan and have a huge amount of respect for the work you do. We've been collaborating with Mental Health First Aid directly and indirectly for a very, very long time. And I think the subject is even more important today than ever before. And I think this is something that I'd really like to explore with you, because we've been through a process of radical and massive global change in a very short period of time. And we were just talking offline before we started the recording that we both were away on holiday for that same week in March. We left the UK in one world and returned to a very, very different world. So we basically had a huge, massive global change happen in a very short period of time. And this has the potential to have a serious impact on how people feel mentally and emotionally. And I think it's really important that we look at, well, what can we do? How can we ensure we navigate this and come out strong and fighting at the other end? So firstly, I just want to get a sense from you. What are your thoughts and observations around what we're going through and the potential impact that this may have?
Yeah, I mean, I think you're absolutely right. Sort of 16th of March through to 16th of April feels like a very long year in 4 weeks, doesn't it? But the bit which I think is really important, that yes, it's clear that there will be impacts on people, but the most important thing I think as our starting point is look how much we've adapted, look how well people have just changed almost everything in a few short weeks, and when I say changed almost everything, that lots and lots of people's routines, patterns, working lives, caring lives have all changed, and that has been done with verve and determination. And of course there have been wobbles. Of course some people are finding it really difficult, but actually huge adaptability. But then I think it's also really exciting to see how much people are talking about well-being, how much people are talking about mental health, how people are checking in with each other, how communities have come together, how, in my experience, meetings are changing, in that often, something that may have taken half an hour and you spoke mostly about work for the 25 minutes, now there's much more checking in time. And the outcome is still the same, in that the decisions that are needed are still made. But actually, there's been much more human connection. Now, I don't think we can ever turn back from that. I hope we can't ever turn back from that. And I know Be Kind is an overused hashtag and perhaps underused in terms of action. But actually, it feels like we may just come out of this a bit kinder, a bit more focused on the humanity than we were going in. And that's something we should all be working for and planning for now.
And I think you've raised some really important points there. And as I said, my observations are that this is the most radical global process of change that I can remember in my lifetime, or conceivably in human history. But change is also very challenging and potentially very stressful for a lot of people, because we get stuck with the way things are, and we get very used to that. We get in our comfort zone. So obviously we're now being forced out of our comfort zone to adapt to a new way of being. And my observations have been, whether at a corporate or national or a global level, if change is supported and managed effectively, it can actually be a wonderful thing. But it's when there's that huge amount of uncertainty and complexity associated with that change, and people are kind of left to their own devices, that's where the stress and anxiety can really start to seep in, because we yearn for the way things used to be. So I don't know what your thoughts and observations are on that, and how we can best support ourselves to adapt, because as you've rightly recognized, we are a really adaptable species when we are motivated and inspired to focus on change. And what we've accomplished in the last couple of weeks is incredible. I don't know if there's any generation of human beings that have been able to adapt as rapidly and quickly as we have, and also all the positive benefits that have come out of this. You cited some of the ones around sort of human connection, the sense of community. If we are to believe what Hollywood has told us, when there is something like a virus like is going on right now, either we're all going to start rioting and looting, or we're all going to turn into zombies. None of that has happened. No one has tried to eat my brains. In fact, what I'm seeing is people getting out on a Thursday evening and clapping the NHS, and people volunteering and rallying and looking after their neighbours. And I'm seeing genuinely the best in humanity for the most part, and no zombies.
Yeah, well, I mean, absolutely. And I guess the other thing to remember in all of this is that often the way we adapt to things is based on how we compare with others. That so much of our ability to adapt is about whether other people are having a better or worse time than us. And of course, everybody is in, or there is a shared sense of experience here. And clearly, it's amplifying inequalities. It's showing that where there are inequalities already, these are amplified by the virus. So I'm not suggesting we're all in it together. There's a level playing field. Of course, there isn't. But we do all have a shared experience, which is adapting to COVID, that recognizing there's job uncertainty, recognizing there's financial uncertainty, recognizing that there's a huge number of people who are being furloughed, and all of those things. I think the fact that so many people are experiencing it will mean that there is a lower overall stress. But of course, at the same time, worried about parents, worried about children's, worried about jobs, worried about partners' jobs, worrying about friends, all what people worrying about having to go to work and putting themselves at risk. There is a huge amount of things that people are also worried about, and that's why it's so important, I guess, in Stress Awareness Month to not only talk about the fact that there is heightened emotion, there's heightened worry, and that we are powerful and adaptable, but actually what are the things that we can do to draw on our resources to help each other, and to really make sure that we are taking our own well-being seriously. Because obviously, if we look after our brains, the more we look after our brains, the more our brain is able to look after us. And that sort of interconnection is really, really important.
No, absolutely. And I think, as you've rightly recognized, that we are all going to at some point experience some stress and some anxiety regarding kind of the totality of this experience, whether that's from a social perspective, whether that's from a financial perspective, whether that's from a career perspective. Maybe it's kind of like you're worried about friends and family. There's a lot of people I know that are mourning the loss of their old life, like whether that be sports or football or socializing, or the things that were a very important part of how you live your life and how you interact and engage with each other. That's all disappeared, and we don't know when it's going to come back. There are many of my male friends that are quite literally like suffering because of the lack of football, because it's for a lot of people, it's a spiritual outlet. And I don't say that lightly. You go to a stadium once a week, you got 10, 20,000 other fans there with you. You're all singing the same song, chanting for the same outcome. Is that just not another form of congregation? So, we don't have the same outlets and opportunities to connect and collaborate and congregate as we used to. So that is another sort of key thing, that if we are to protect ourselves mentally, physically, emotionally, we need to find new ways to be able to engage and ensure that we get the support and the connection that are so important for our overall well-being.
Absolutely, and I guess So I'm a horse rider, so my horse is in lockdown, and my dog is also in lockdown with my parents. Those are the two things which give joy, on a day-to-day basis ordinarily. And there is a danger of mourning that, but without replacing it with something. And of course,
Absolutely.
it is, how do you find the things that can replace it, but also recognizing that sometimes just putting one foot in front of the other is enough. We don't have to be earnest about finding ways to connect or to create new things. We just need to be able to check in with how we are, understand how we're feeling. If we're feeling good enough, keep doing what you're doing. If we're not feeling good enough, try to think about the things which can be done to boost some of that. And I think it is important to be connected. The thing which I've also learned in the last month is, at the beginning we said stay connected. Now I keep saying to people, make sure you disconnect, because actually, we can do Zoom meetings all day. And then I went to my first ever Zoom birthday party on Monday night, and actually it was great fun. It was one of my best friends, but there's also Zoom invitations to this and Zoom invitations to that. And so that sense of connecting is really, really important as well. Whether that's jigsaws, whether that's books, whether that's solitude in the daily exercise, whatever it is, finding the balance for ourselves. Our our lives should always be balanced, and work should fit within that. And for people who are working, when I say life should be balanced, work should fit within it. It sounds very dictatorial. My sense is that we need a balanced life, and work being part of that. And where our work lives and our personal lives are coming together, for that significant number of people who are now working from home, it's still really important to try and establish that balance, and try to feel connected to the way that we are living and doing things.
No, absolutely, because the challenge is when you're working from home, there isn't a clear separation between work and home. If you're on your kitchen table, when does the work day start? When does the work day finish? And I think this, again, is that process of adapting to a new norm, and being able to have some kind of a structured routine. And it doesn't necessarily need to look the same as when you actually turn up to an office, for example. If it means that you're taking a walk at lunchtime and working a little bit later and adapting, that should be okay, because unless obviously you're required to be on a certain number of hours. Because, as I said, this affords us an opportunity to design our day in a way that serves us and allows us those periods of disconnection. And in particular, when we're connected to our social media, to our WhatsApps, to our news channels, there's a lot of information that's being thrown at us 24/7, and some of that potentially is likely to increase your anxiety, because you're being told about all the problems and all the things that are wrong. And actually being able to disconnect that from that and just be present to what's happening right now, whether that's just, as you said, walking in the sunshine with your family or your dog, or just being able to sit and just be present to the reality of this moment.
Yeah, I think that is true, and I think both the news, on 24/7. I personally try to limit intake of news to as little as possible, because it doesn't do very much for me. But I also think what I find difficult is when you've got WhatsApps, and you've got LinkedIn, and you've got Facebook, and you've got text, and you've got Twitter direct messages, and you've got email, and you've got Teams channels, and I'm like, I don't actually know that I can keep up with all of this. So one of my exercises in this period is actually to start slimming down some of it, and just recognizing that actually trying to operate across all of the platforms all of the time isn't doing me any favors. And I think, again, for some people it's really important to have lots of platforms. For some, just one or two. It's working out what's right for ourselves, rather than there being any one right way.
No, I totally agree. And I think also, as part of this, reflecting back on some of your comments earlier, that there are going to be times where every single one of us is going to be negatively impacted by this scenario. There'll be something that will hit, or something that will happen that might trigger, some kind of negative emotional reaction. And I guess I've always been an advocate of the concept that it's okay to not be okay. Like, if there are those moments where you're feeling overwhelmed, or you wake up with a bit of a black cloud hanging over you, we're all going to experience that, and it's okay to feel compromised in the same way that you might wake up with a sniffle or a crick in your neck or a sore leg. It will get better. Everything in the universe is transient. So I think it's really important that people don't try and maintain this constant smile on your face and positive glow, because there will be those days where you're going to feel compromised, and it's important that we embrace that as part of the overall life experience.
Absolutely. I mean, our feelings are just our feelings, aren't they? And we can't change them, but we can embrace them and recognize them and name them and do whatever we need to do. I know some people do writing around it. So one of the things which I do each day is, before I get up, think about 3 things I'm grateful for, which is a really important part of me and my mindset, and was something I learned a few years ago, which is serving incredibly well now. But I think, yes, of course, there will be days when it's overwhelming and days when it's difficult, and that might also be weeks. And we just have to, these are unprecedented times. We don't have to be overly productive. We don't have to be joyful all of the time. We don't have to hide behind a happy face, because it will be difficult. But just to go back to your point before about the kitchen table, one of the things that I would say feels though it's helpful is, if you are working on the kitchen table, pack up at the end of the day before eating. Create some of those distinctions. Create the way that you can say, actually, okay, I need to rest now. And enable that to happen, rather than, as I often do, just leave the computer there, go around to the other side of the kitchen table and eat supper. Actually, it's much better in my mind to clear things out. And I think it's all of those little things. If we can all do lots of little things, whether that's noticing, outside, there's some really beautiful flowering at the moment. We're going into May and it looks amazing. And actually taking those moments to just stop and to think about what we can be grateful for, and the Action for Happiness calendar with their actions, which are all based on evidence. Really good ways of just doing little things which enable us to try and help ourselves and our emotional well-being. But you're absolutely right. We don't always have to be happy.
And I wholeheartedly agree with your comments. And I think this gives us a nice segue to kind of look at how we take this discussion to a more macro level. There are many people within our network that are business leaders, managers. What can we do in this time, in this kind of, this unusual experience that we're having, to ensure that we're able to best support our people's well-being and mental health, given that it's not going to be easy to get them together to run sort of training sessions or the kind of programs that people would typically have access to in the workplace. For example, like the mental health first aid programs that you run, it may not be easy or even feasible to be able to get those kind of programs up and running. What can we be thinking about, and what can we do to ensure people's well-being is supported and valued during this period?
It's a really important question. I guess there's a number of things which we've been thinking about. The first is to be really clear in redefining objectives. Most organisations now have paused their business plans in one way, shape, or form. It's important, I think, to be clear with teams exactly what is expected and what is the priority during this period, so that there's that absolute clarity. And then communicating and re-communicating is obviously really, really important. And I guess as part of that, recognizing that there will be loss within that for people. So being really clear that it's not about value in normal times, it's about what has to be the priority in these very, very particular times that we're experiencing. So I think that's the first thing. I think there's then also the very honest conversation about recognizing that everybody is going to be dealing with their own set of circumstances at this time, and providing as much flexibility as we possibly can to enable people to manage what is often complex, in terms of emotions and practical things at these times. We produce some guidance at MHFA England about the sort of principles of creating routines, staying active, staying connected, getting support, as key sort of functions within that. But I think some of the learning that we're also getting is if you give people permission, they will also identify the things that they need to do and are taking time. So one of our colleagues has developed a radio station, and they do an hour's radio station on Thursday afternoon. We've got some people that are doing work around nutrition and helping people to think about nutrition, some around exercise. These are all things which are drawing on the resources and the understanding of people, but actually what people needed was that opportunity and space. So we've got a social channel, a well-being channel, which people are putting on their own meditation and mindfulness. So I guess it's that really, it's endorsing people's efforts and providing space for people's efforts to help each other is one of the most important things I think that we can do. But clearly, as line managers, we've got that we have to stay connected. We have to try to do what we would do if we're in face-to-face environments. And I'm talking as for people working from home. How do we make sure that we're still checking in with people? How do we make sure we're understanding people's circumstances? That it may be really. I talk about the luxury of a kitchen table and being able to move from one side to the other. For some people, they're working in shared houses where there isn't the space for, or some people without data, or unhappy, or violent homes. How do we try to understand the circumstance people are in, and then do our best to support them and connect them into other sources of support where they may need that?
No, that is a really good point there, because engagement is even more important now. It's very easy to fall into that out of mind, and let people get on with things. But there's a lot of people that will be feeling disengaged, disconnected, don't have the ability to share. They could be at home by themselves and not have another human being to interact with. And what are your thoughts around sort of the best ways to facilitate positive engagement and to ensure that people aren't left like suffering in isolation?
I mean, there are all sorts of obviously channels, and people will have their channels, and you might have Chatter or whatever it is that enables you to get a sense of the sort of collective mood and to operate on that. But the key bit is exactly as you say, that providing more opportunities to connect and engage, and ensuring that is really about checking in. So most of our teams are checking in on a daily basis. Some of them around departments, and some around functions. In our six, we've redefined our priority objectives, and people creating new teams around those. So the finding ways to make sure that there are connections, but also being really clear that the social connection is as important. One of our colleagues set up a virtual kitchen, which is an open space online each day, at which people are going in at sort of coffee moments, and it's exactly the same way as you do at work. There are kitchen moments. It's not this is at 10:30, everyone come in. It's literally pop in. Oh, who happens to be in there having conversations? So that it isn't all about departments and teams. It is also just the people who would ordinarily see each other in the kitchen are seeing each other in kitchens. I think it's just using the talent and creativity of your team to come up with those ways. But as line managers, as leaders, being really clear that there are expectations, that you are checking in daily, regularly, whatever the right system is. But whatever you did before, double it and triple it, and that was probably about right.
And if you had to kind of come up with sort of 2 or 3 key things that every manager or employer really needs to consider very carefully to ensure that we're able to navigate these uncertain waters we find ourselves in, what would they be from your perspective and from the advice that you're putting out through Mental Health First Aid? What are kind of the top things that we need to be aware of? Obviously, we talked about engagement being one of them.
Yeah, I mean, I guess for me, it's about our honest relationship with staff at this time, and communicating as much as we can about what the scenarios are, so that people understand, the extraordinary circumstances that we are operating in, and what that means, and ensuring that you're providing information as soon as you're able to. The second is then
sorry,
about.
before you move on to the second one, I just want to clarify that, because that's a really important thing that you mentioned there. What about when we don't know? Because there's a lot of uncertainty. We don't know when lockdown's going to be lifted. We don't know when we're able to return back to the workplace. What should we be communicating as employers, as business leaders, if we just don't know what's happening?
That we don't know.
Great. And I'm glad you said that, because I wholeheartedly agree with that there's a lot of people that don't communicate because they don't know what to communicate. I believe, as you do, that it's better to say we don't know than say nothing.
Yeah, I mean, in fact, when we don't know, it's probably even more important to say something, because if we don't say, when there is nothing said, our imaginations fill the gap.
Absolutely.
And so it's much, much better to be clear about what we do and don't know. I think the second one is around trust, that we have to trust people to do their best, in these circumstances, and being really clear about, what is the priority for the business, but actually that, to be explicit that we trust teams to do the work in the best ways that they can, recognizing you've got parenting responsibilities, recognizing people have got caring responsibilities, recognizing that there might be all sorts of uncertainties in their lives. And then the third bit is ensuring that there is checking in, that there is a way of people knowing how their people are, and really taking that time to listen. And I think we talked about it earlier on, that it feels as though we have had a seismic shift, that people are saying, how are you, and wanting the answer now, whereas often it's a form of words as a greeting without actually the listening as a response. And I think it is absolutely vital that is there, and that we find ways. So we will use the phrase, how are you looking after yourself? So how are you looking after yourself is the first question as part of our one-to-one. And of course, what that does by asking the same question is it allows you to see changes. And it's when things are changing that there might be signals that things are not as good as they could be. And that's when we can ask what help we might be able to provide. And then finally, celebrating, celebrating one foot in front of the other, celebrating at the end of the week the work that's being done, taking every opportunity. We all need something to feel optimistic about, and so just everybody likes to feel appreciated, and appreciation feels even more important at a time when actually we may not be finding things as great. And with Mondays and Fridays, for those who are working Monday to Friday, not feeling that much different than a weekend, how do you mark success at the end of the week and create optimism for the week ahead, I think is a really important opportunity for leaders.
That's wonderful. There's some really useful things there. And just one of the things you mentioned about actually checking in on people. There was, I'm sure you remember that the Ask Twice campaign, the hashtag Ask Twice, from a couple of years ago. Because, if I say to you, Simon, how are you? You're going to often go back to your tried and tested response, which could be, I'm fine, I'm good, I can't complain. Or if you ask me, I say I'm wonderful. The majority of the time, it's a lie. I'm just going back to my preset response. It's not necessarily how I actually feel right now. I think this is a great opportunity to actually genuinely inquire after people's welfare and well-being. And, if that means we're going back and asking twice, or asking that question in a slightly different way, we're much more likely to get a true and honest perspective as to where somebody is in that given moment. Something we do in our team meetings, we ask people to give two subjective words to describe how they are right now, and that tells me a lot more than if I ask them, how are you?
And I saw something on Twitter the other day where somebody said, I've stopped asking how you are and started saying, these are really difficult times, how are you feeling right now? So finding your own way, your own style, but it is that sense of checking in. And I guess also to remember that we also need to check in with ourselves. And so on MHFA England's website, there's a checking in sort of tool. We've also got an interactive sort of stress container, which is about how you ensure that we are getting rid of or trying to expunge levels so that our stress container doesn't overflow. And of course, we all have different capacities to manage different situations and different circumstances, but understanding where we are, understanding how we are feeling and what we might be able to do to look after ourselves is important for ourselves as it is for other people. We can't do for other people what we can't do for ourselves.
And you're absolutely right. It's the classic airplane analogy when they go through the safety instructions before the plane takes off. They always suggest if there's a drop in cabin pressure and the oxygen mask fall from the ceiling, we should always put it on ourselves first before we attempt to put it on someone else. Because you can't help anyone else, whether that be an old person, an injured person, or a child, if you're suffocating yourself. But we do live in a society where often people feel it's selfish to prioritize their own needs. Mm-hmm. I personally believe it's selfless because the people that look after themselves have more capacity to be able to support others.
Yeah, absolutely. And arguably, if you were to turn it the other way around, it's selfish not to, because if you're not looking after yourself, you're not paying attention to yourself, then you're not getting what you need, which means that in return, you can't do the best for others. So I don't want to be the person that says it's selfish not to look after yourself, because that becomes a bit finger wagging and punishing. But it is important to look after ourselves because we're worth it. And until we look after ourselves, we will always do a lesser job of looking after others.
Totally. So what are mental health first aid doing to support people during these unprecedented times? I totally appreciate a lot of your courses are in person, face to face. How have you adapted, and what are you doing differently to ensure people get the support they need from your wonderful organisation during this period?
I'm really glad you said the words unprecedented. I couldn't go through a whole half-hour conversation without that word being used in some way, shape or form. So we are doing some of our courses already are available online. And so, like everyone, COVID-19 has pushed digital transformation in ways which digital leaders have been trying for a while, I think. And so we have some of our courses online, and we're just in the process of actually adapting the 2-day mental health first aid course, and which will be available in a matter of weeks in virtual classrooms. So we're trying to ensure that we are delivering and providing that training. We provided, as I said, some guidance about working from home. I did a blog at the end of last week, which was 1 month on, what have we learned? So trying to put out, some of our learning into the world. But keeping, we are delivering courses, and that portfolio, will increase. There's line manager resource, a refresher course for people who've already done it, the awareness course, and then also putting the core mental health first aid program into a virtual classroom in the next weeks ahead.
Fantastic. And where can people go to find out more if they want to get more information, they want to access some of your programs or some of the resource material that you mentioned earlier in our discussion? Where would people go?
mhfaengland.org. So onto the website, www.mhfaengland.org. Or if you look on Twitter, it's at MHFA England. The link to the website is on that, and my Twitter is Simon A. Blake, and we'll often be putting out links. We've also been curating information and guidance from other people, so trying to pull together. There's so much good information out there, and there's a web page for mental health first aiders, and also for everyone with got useful resources on that website.
Fantastic. And we are recording this on Earth Day. So firstly, I want to start by wishing you happy Earth Day. But also, you mentioned that we've gone through a process of digital change that the digital sort of leaders in the digital economy have been trying to force on us for a very long time. We've also been through a process of change that the climate change advocates have been trying to force on us for a long time, which is a good thing. And we're seeing, I think this is probably the most we've got to celebrate on Earth Day than in any Earth Day than I can remember, because the amount of pollution that has literally just disappeared, the positive impacts of the climate, how quickly it's regenerated, animals are flourishing. So as much as it's uncomfortable and challenging for many of us, there are so many positives, and I think that's something that we can celebrate this Earth Day. I don't know what your thoughts are on that.
Absolutely agree. I used to live in Wales, and a friend said that one of the towns in West Wales, the goats took over the streets the other day, and and I saw something where penguins had taken over the street somewhere as well. So absolutely. I mean. I hope that we learn from this, and I think there is so many things which we may be able to take from it. I know a colleague put on a conference that would have been an international conference. They put it on digitally, 1,000 people. I hope that 800 of them will say we'll only ever do digital conferences, and that we get better at doing them in ways which mean that we don't have to travel, A, because of the climate, B, for our well-being, C, for costs. And time away from home. So, there's so many different things. And I saw a survey yesterday which said, that almost 20% of people are saying that actually their well-being has improved as a result of being in this period and working from home. I haven't read the full results yet, but I'm assuming that there's less commuting and all of those sorts of things. So, we have to learn. We have to dig deep inside ourselves and find ways to really make sure that we don't go back to how we were before. There isn't going to be a return to normal. There will be a progress to a new normal, and I hope that we'll take lots of the good things into that.
And absolutely, the post-COVID-19 world is going to look very different, and adversity creates opportunity. And as you said, that there are lots of wonderful things that have come out of this. And my wellbeing coach sat here with me today, little Belle. She's embracing this because she's getting time and opportunities that our dogs wouldn't get because they're normally cooped up all day. So I think there's a lot of wonderful things that can come out of this, as long as we're willing to adapt and be open to change and to get the support we need to navigate this period of change. And I think there's a lot of wonderful things that have come out from our discussion today. I could talk to you for hours, but it was a real joy and pleasure. I know you're a very, very busy man, so thanks for taking your for time out of your busy day to talk to us.
Can I just say one thing just before we finish? Sorry, I think we do have to really think about how can we come out this stronger. We also have to just want to say we have to think about inequalities, that the people who experience inequalities, if we're not careful, this will have made those worse, and we can't allow that to be the case coming out the other side, because it's shone a light. We can't, for example, house homeless people. Oh, COVID-19 is no longer here. Back to the streets. It just doesn't. It's morally reprehensible, and we have to really think about that. Whether that's about the a disproportionate number of black and minority ethnic people who are dying, whatever it is, we've got to face into some really uncomfortable truths as part of shifting through and building a better world coming out.
Again, this potentially is the subject of a follow-up conversation further down the line, but that astounded me that we got rid of homelessness in London in a few days. Mm-hmm. If we could do that now, why can't we do that before? If we were able to find the ways to support people and businesses during this crisis, why have we not been able to do this previously? We've all of a sudden been able to get support and fund new hospitals and get more people working within the NHS, either by recalling retired or getting new personnel in. So if that was the case, where was all of these ideas previously? So that's an important point. And I think there are many things that this situation has highlighted which will give us the opportunity, and I'm hoping that we're able to use this opportunity positively to create a better world post this crisis. So I think that's definitely something we can say for a further conversation down the line. I look forward to that. Wishing you and your loved ones all the best during this period, and thank you once again to yourself and your organisation for the wonderful work you do. And once again, it was mentalhealth-england.org. Is that correct?
mhfaengland.org.
Wonderful. Take care, Simon. We'll speak again soon. Look after yourself. Stay safe, stay healthy.
And you, take care.